Real questions, real answers for real life. Come on in and pull up a chair. You're at 1850 Main Street with Michael DelGiorno and David Zanotti.
Are you familiar with the Harry Potter franchise? Does anyone in politics today remind you of he who must not be named?
Okay, you're always starting our conversations. I want to start one for a change. And I want to make you very uncomfortable because I want to, before I even bring up the topic, I want to bring up the two or three biggest influences you've had on my life, which will be very uncomfortable for you. You never like these kinds of conversations. So I see us worldview-wise identical, doctrinally, biblically viewed identical, humanly identical, but we express ourselves and feed our being very different. So it isn't fair to say that you're an intellect and I'm a feeler, but I tend to...
It sounds a little creepy.
Well, yeah, kind of a thing. So this will shock you. And it's not so much golf, which when I was playing well, you'd crinkle wrappers. And usually you're trying to improve a game that I just can't improve at, which is a whole other thing. It really is. You're big on reading and movies, which I am. The difference is I'm reading Tom Papa's book. You're reading something about George Washington trying to get home and celebrate Christmas in the middle of a war. All right, so we read different things. Movie-wise, we're pretty good. We tend to find different movies at different times, but I think our taste is very similar. And then I was busy living the life of C.S. Lewis, and you were studying it, and then together we absorb all that. So why do I bring that up? Movies is a big influence. So I would have never read, which you have read, let alone enjoyed watching, which you made me, and I did, Harry Potter. The entire series fascinates you. We could have a whole long conversation about Harry Potter in and of itself, but I watched the movie. The two big characters, when you go beyond Harry and his friends and the magic and sorcery or whatever you want to call it, is really Lord Voldemort and the snake, right? That's the two manifestations. There are two things, if you're in Hogwarts, that you got to worry about. It's him showing up or his snake showing up. Now, the bad part about the snake is if the snake's there, he's not far away. All right. Mm-hmm. So the snake's not there and Lord Voldemort is somewhere else. That means you see the snake, the big monster's there too. The devil himself, if you will. And I'm really looking at everything going on. And I know things can change a lot in 8 months, and I think they can get a lot weirder. But to me, I came across this kind of, not epiphany. It's not big enough to be an epiphany. And I ran it by you on your morning show, and it just had no interest whatsoever. And so now I want to uncomfortably remind you, this is about a movie and a book. Movies, books, David. This is your wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, when it comes to the Democrat Party apparatus, when it comes to probably Soros and Podesta and the grass tops money and the foot soldiers and the strategists, Lord Voldemort is Donald Trump. And we dare not speak his name, and he would not speak his name 13 times in a State of the Union. But I'm beginning to think the snake is RFK. And so I have this big epiphany that the media views RFK as the snake. And ultimately, for the media and the Democrat apparatus, Lord Voldemort is Trump. Are we watching Harry Potter? And then I look at you right now, and I'm getting the same blank stare. So my question to you to start our conversation is, why am I having like a big epiphany and you're not?
Well, no. I think that the idea of, first off, thanks for watching the movies, thanks for reading the books, and thanks for being open to the conversation. Because
right.
One of the challenges that we have, and we're going to talk about this in some upcoming conversations, I know, is translating discoveries into language that other people can embrace. You say, well, okay, that, that's not necessarily a unique calling. The idea of translating truth
is discernment, right?
Yeah, and everyone does it every single day. We just do it at different levels in different places. Everybody's in the same process. We just happen to do it at a higher profile level and have for a long, long time. but it's the same business. And I think if you don't lose touch with that and you're willing to say, I think I figured something out, and be as open and as honest as you are always about what you think you figured out. And the collision of these golf cart conversations benefits us both. And when people get a chance to overhear them, I think from what we can tell, people feel that it helps them as well. So Voldemort, the name that cannot be mentioned, I think it's really fascinating that President Biden has chosen to take that tack with my predecessor. It's pure theater, it's pure drama, and yeah, it does. It really does.
It feels like Lord Voldemort.
He walks right into the Harry Potter imagery. I mean,
the media does the same with RFK, don't they? It's more the Gandhi quote. First they ignored him, continued to ignore him, then they mocked him. Now they're battling him. They're attacking him from all different angles on things that go back to 1983, which is ridiculous. But he's kind of the snake, isn't he? That the media sees as something that could lead to Voldemort following closely was my analogy. Because if we get this right, David, we can predict everything that's going to happen. I can tell you what the media is going to do pieces on next week. I can tell you what the president is going to be saying in speeches. That's why I try to find these themes.
Without a doubt, we are in a drama. There's no doubt about it. And what's unfortunate is something like Harry Potter. Again, people have different opinions about Harry Potter. And I've never had the privilege of interviewing J.K. Rowling, which is one of the goals
of your life,
of my life. I've had some chances we've seen some amazing interviews over the years that we had hoped for, prayed for, sought for years. I would love to interview J.K. Rowling just because I have so much respect for her journey and for her capacity as a writer and for the influence that she has had. And I'm not suggesting that the thematics of her storytelling are completely uniform with any set of doctrines. I'm not suggesting that she wrote her book to try to influence the religious views of generations. I don't know that. I'd like to ask her some of those questions.
But the symbolism was powerful. And for Christians to reject it, they're missing some great stuff.
Well, and I'm not, and nor am I saying that Christians should embrace Rowling's work at the same level you can embrace Lewis's work,
of course,
or Tolkien's work,
right?
Because they're not coming from exactly the same point. Even though she did study English literature at the collegiate level, and she's very familiar, and you'll see commonalities. Come on, when you're talking, whether you're talking about Tolkien or Lewis or Rowling, you're going to have a lot of trains in the story. Okay, it's just the British thing to do. But the point of it is that it is a conversation about good and evil. That much everybody agrees on. It is a conversation about good and evil. Now, it doesn't translate 1-to-1 into a presidential election because, in my opinion, there are good things about Joe Biden and bad things about Joe Biden. There are good things about Donald Trump and bad things about Donald Trump. We're hiring a chief executive officer. That's the first mistake that everybody makes. We have this elevated, and your point is so well taken because it's now become elevated. A simple election for someone who can only serve for 48 months. We're hiring to do a job that's constitutionally prescribed and has all kinds of legal parameters in it. You'd think we were hiring the chief wizard of the universe, who, when they will take their magic elder wand, wave a wand, and change all of reality. What a crock that is.
Or should be.
But it's very discerning of you to see what they're actually doing and realize that's the tale they're trying to spin on all of us. And the media, which is the American media, the MegaMedia, and I call it that. I want to MegaMedia. That's CDZ. That's copyright on DZ. MegaMedia, because it sounds a lot like MegaMedia.
Or mainstream media, but more accurately, what it really is, it's a handful of conglomerates of a very specific worldview and agenda with great resources controlling the narratives for all.
Yeah, and they're monsters in size and in scope and influence. They're the MegaMedia. They uniformly have a position on all of this. And Donald Trump to them is Lord Voldemort. That's all there is to it. He is the worst thing that could actually happen. He is the manifestation of evil. And that argument is as absurd as saying that Joe Biden is the incorporation of all evil. Look, Joe Biden, there's not enough going on left in there for him to be that, that in that collusion. Now, you could, there's a lot of terms you could use.
Out of respect, I stopped saying something that I'll confess to you. I used to say, in the body that once housed the mind of Joe Biden. And then I kind of, stopped doing that because it started feeling disrespectful. But when I first said it, I really didn't mean it disrespectful. It has been ingrained in me, and I know we have the same heritage, to respect elders. And by the way, that's not something you're forced to do because your parents told you. There's wisdom in people who have lived. We are more ignorant, and we are not as bright today because we're not surrounded by great aunts and uncles and grandparents who live in our home who are sharing wisdom full time with 2 generations forward. There's a lot to learn from our elders, but in the case of Joe Biden, I do think whether it's dementia and it's vascular or whether it's Alzheimer's, there's something going on there. Now, why we're in America so desperate for a king that we will play these kinds of political games and prop up people in such positions, this man should be resting comfortably, surrounded by grandchildren, watching television, doing very simple things. He just shouldn't be president of the United States at this cognitive state of his life or at an age of life expectancy. But yeah, he's not quite. Well, I guess if we really wanted to go crazy with what are he might be a what is it? Warcrux or what is it? Horcrux
Horcrux.
Yeah, because he's
that's
not really
Joe
Biden anymore. Yeah. There might be portions of Joe Biden, but it's really the people behind him that are operating through him.
Yeah, we can't push Joe to Horcrux level. That wouldn't fit in the illustration whatsoever.
When you subscribe to 1850 Main Street, you're the first to find out what's happening next with new guests, publications, and events. And when you spread the word about 1850 Main Street, you're helping others find real answers to the real questions facing America right now. To learn more, visit 1850mainstreet.com. And please, tell a friend.
What's crazy about this conversation is that we should have our producer, Jonah Jackson, in on this because he's the guy that actually guilted me. He and his wife guilted me into reading Harry Potter. I avoided it for most of my life. And Jonah managed to, and his lovely wife, who happens to be my daughter, they guilted me.
I was just going to say, are you referring to it, your daughter? You were first, pal.
And they gave me a gift. Now, these are 2 broke, starving artists at the time, and they give me a gift of the first and second Harry Potter book that they bought at a second-hand store because they didn't have much money anyhow. And they tied it up in a lovely bow and said, "Here, Dad, this is a gift for you." Now, what am I supposed to do? Not read the books? Of
course you have to.
So that goes back to the Rowling question. All right, so we can take the illustration too far. I get that. No, Joe Biden is not a Horcrux, and no, but RFK is not a snake. But when we're talking about the MegaMedia, the American MegaMedia, they do see the Trump campaign as a threat. Why? Why do they see the Trump campaign as such a threat? Well, the only thing that they say coming to all of us is that it's because he's the devil, because he is Voldemort, because he is inherently, innately evil, and they can't stop likening him to Hitler. And they're trying to tell us that what they're afraid of is brutal authoritarianism and that he will strip people of all their liberties. Okay? Look, the psychological dynamics on this are simply whacked. And so to bring this up as you're bringing it up is such a fertile ground for conversation.
Yeah.
Because we're not talking about wizards and magic wands. We're talking about somebody who's going to hold a job for 48 months, who doesn't have a magic wand.
Well, and then the deeper question is this a tactic, a strategy, a political theater, or do these people who apparently 9 times out of 10 when we're having worldview conversations don't believe in good and evil? They never explain good and evil when it comes to mass shootings, when it comes to abortion or other issues. Now suddenly they believe in good and evil, and of course they're good, and Trump is evil. The question is, do they really? When I was watching Robert De Niro with Bill Maher, and he's telling Bill Maher this laundry list of things that Donald Trump, I wouldn't play him. There's nothing redeemable about him. He is the devil himself. He is evil personified. He is a monster. And then what I really didn't appreciate, and he must be stopped. We live in a crazy world. Nobody needs any inciting to take physical violence and be incited in any way. Do they really believe this? I mean, at the point when Robert De Niro looks at Bill Maher and says, if this guy's elected, everything's going to change. You won't have a show anymore. Wait a minute. He was elected. He did serve 4 years. Bill Maher did have a show. If he gets in office, he'll never leave. He did get into office, and he did leave. Yeah, he questioned some anomalies on the way out the door, and you hung an insurrection around his neck. But so honest to goodness, I can't put my mind. I have a God. I have a worldview. I believe in reality. I have common sense. I have intellect. I can't think like them. But the question becomes, do they really think he's a monster? Do they really think he's Lord Voldemort? Do they really think he is evil personified? Or is this a tactic? I don't know. But either way, I can tell you, when it comes to the president and his henchmen and chief strategists and funders, Lord Voldemort is Trump, and the media views RFK as the snake. And they ultimately fear Trump, but they got to kill the snake first.
Well, when it comes to good and evil, the modern secularist, which is the controlling agency and mindset of the MegaMedia, what is good is what makes me feel good. What is evil is what frightens me. So the bigger question we have to ask is, why does Donald Trump frighten them? And they say that Donald Trump frightens them because he's Hitler. Well, they don't really know much about Hitler. Yeah, they haven't really studied much about Hitler. They don't really know how Hitler came to power. They don't know a lot of things about all of that. But that's, so that's how, in essence, we create the boogeyman. Now, the people who would take the other side of this argument could just as easily say that Joe Biden's Hitler. Because when you look at the totalitarian aspects of the Justice Department, the weaponization of justice, it's almost as if everything they say about Donald Trump, they're actually doing. The left is actually doing to people right now. The policies, the sense of government and all power and control. But the point is, the whole thing falls to the ground. If somebody turns the lights on and says, excuse me, we're hiring an executive agent to operate for 48 months to run one branch of our civil government, he or she does not have a magic wand.
And he can't execute anything that the legislature doesn't
Permit.
create.
And they could overrule and override. So this is where thinking people have to stop and say, you know what? You're all full of it. You're all full of it. The whole thing falls apart. If you want to have a fantasy, then by all means, watch Harry Potter. By all means,
it's a much better story.
It's a much better story. It's far more intellectually provocative. But this is nonsense. So I really appreciate the conversation because we've talked about this before. We're in the crazy season. I mean, we are really, truly in the crazy season.
No, but you have to admit, I thought it would get crazier and crazier. And by convention time, I thought we'd be looking at each other going, all right, it's gotten crazy. It started crazy. I don't even know what we're going to define 4 months as.
And the thing is that we have no idea who's going to do what next. But both these characters at the top have the potential of having things happen to them or doing things that are absolutely wild and crazy beyond imagination. I think it's just getting warmed up.
I guess we get sucked into playing their game and everything becomes political to the point where we become as paralyzed as those inside the Beltway. Instead of ever achieving getting Washington to truly represent America, America has become a mirror of Washington and paralyzed in divide and division. And by the way, the secret is just stop playing the game.
Yeah. And by bringing up this illustration, let me carry it out to its conclusion. Washington, D.C. is not Hogwarts. It's not the Ministry of Magic. It's not the place from which all reality emanates. America is the exact antithesis of that. Reality in America starts when human beings put their feet on the floor every morning and hit the breakfast table and then go out and work for a living and take care of the people that they love and care for. That's America. That's why America was started, to give people the civil liberties. And in regards to our form of government, our entire construction of government isn't to create a federal agency or a bureaucracy that enables us to do everything. The very construct of our Constitution is designed to restrict power, not create it. That's a huge difference. Our government exists, our Constitution exists, our Bill of Rights exists to restrict power, not create it.
So the question is between now and November, not how crazy it's going to get, but will the American people focus on themselves? And I don't mean that selfishly. You know, what are you paying for gas? What are you paying for groceries? How much of your 401k have you had to use? How are you, giving your children a better life than you had, or securing their future and their prosperity and their security? Will they focus on themselves, or will they stay focused on this show, this Harry Potter show? Will they root for themselves?
All
or will they stay
apologies to J.K. Rowling. It's a really bad imitation. It's really off Broadway on this one. Way off.
Or will they root for themselves, or will they root blindly for their R team or D team?
And how will they see the candidates? Will they see the candidates only as they're seen as combatants? Exactly. As characters, or will they actually have? And this is not an easy situation, because it's a bad position to be in when Americans are constantly given A or B. And now, in this case, there may be an A or a B or a C choice. Right? One of the great things about our country is that the framers and the founders figured out that if we did centralize our attention on the executive branch, the great news is the executive branch doesn't have any lawmaking power, so we should be able to balance out bad executive branch players with the Congress. The problem is that starting with Republicans and being multiplied each time around in the last 40 years, executive orders have now become a lawmaking methodology that no one in Congress has the guts to challenge, and no one has the guts. They're just beginning to challenge these executive orders in courts. And so then when the executive waves his magic wand of the pen and then empowers the administrative agencies to go out and eliminate people's rights, how do you stop them? There's the danger.
I want to go full circle, because you didn't notice I only gave one influence. I didn't give the last. But going full circle, your influence of movies and books. Well, this aggravating conversation is your fault. You're the one that made me watch Harry Potter, and now I see the snake and Lord Voldemort. The other that you always gave me was hope. I would tend to, because basically we're very similar in that we love God, period, end of story. We believe in him. We're in a constant battle to serve him, know him better, love him more, and serve him better. Outside of that, we're very simple people. We love our family. That's it. We love God. We love our family. And then when it came to what I do vocationally, I would get sucked into the battle, and I would get hopeless. And you were always this example of hope. And I would get to the point where it's over, David. This thing's done. We're going under. And then, because you know what? Just as military will tell you the enemy has a say, God always has the final say. And I am, from being influenced by you, I now tangibly see throughout our history, when things look the darkest, it's before a dawn. Just when you lose all hope, a cultural awakening is brewing. Just when you lose all hope in the church, a spiritual revival is brewing. And just when you lose hope in the American people, that they're getting outsmarted, that they're getting duped, they're always smart enough to rise up and save the republic. That kind of a movement, in addition to 8 months of crazy, is brewing. And I don't think God or the American people are going to let us down again.
The conversations are just getting started. To get connected, check out 1850mainstreet.com. We don't data mine anyone or sell your information. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single conversation. We'll see you next time here at 1850 Main Street.